Millionaire comes home early and catches the maid protecting his daughter from the cruel stepmother. When Ethan Caldwell pulled up to his hillside mansion, the Seattle evening was already wrapped in a thick mist. He hadn't planned to return early, but a strange intuition made him change his mind halfway. "Maybe Emily will be happy to see me," he thought with a faint smile, unaware that within minutes his entire life would change. The door opened to a haunting silence. No music, no smell of dinner. "Veronica?" he called softly, but only his own echo answered back. He set his briefcase down, took off his coat, and walked through the long corridor where the dim wall lights painted gold streaks on the floor. Then, through the stillness, came a fragile, broken sound, the quiet sob of a child, followed by a trembling woman's voice. "Please, ma'am, don't do this. She's just a little girl." Ethan froze. That voice? Sofia's, the new housekeeper? His chest tightened. From down the hallway, another voice sliced through the air, sharp and cruel. "Get out of my way, you stupid maid! That crippled kid brings nothing but bad luck. You don't tell me how to behave in my own house?" Ethan's stomach turned. That was Veronica. No, it couldn't be. The woman he trusted, the one who promised to love his daughter like her own, was now spitting venom at her. He moved closer, each step heavier than the last, hearing glass shatter and Emily's sobbing plea. "Please, it hurts!" His pulse roared in his ears. Ethan pushed the door open. The sight hit him like a blow. Emily was curled in her wheelchair, tears streaking her cheeks. Veronica, flawless in her white designer dress, had her hand clamped on the child's arm. In front of her stood Sofia, trembling but defiant. "You're hurting her," Sofia cried, tears in her eyes. Veronica spun around, eyes blazing. "Shut up! Who do you think you are, you cheap little maid?" The words hung in the air just as Ethan stepped into the doorway. The room fell dead silent. Veronica froze. Sofia gasped. Emily looked up, her eyes wide with fear. Ethan's gaze locked on his wife, his voice low, controlled, deadly. "Stop right now." And in that suspended breath of silence, Ethan finally understood. Something inside his perfect home had been rotting all along, and he had been too blind to see it. The room was wrapped in a suffocating silence. The dim yellow light flickered across Veronica's pale face. Her eyes darted, searching for an excuse. "Ethan, you're home early," she murmured, forcing a brittle smile. Ethan said nothing. He moved forward slowly, his gaze fixed on the red marks left by Veronica's fingers on Emily's fragile arm. The little girl whimpered, trying to pull away, but too weak. Sofia stood her ground, trembling, her small shoulders shaking, but her eyes firm. "Let go of her," Ethan said quietly, his voice deep and commanding. Veronica flinched, quickly letting go. "You're misunderstanding, Ethan. I was just teaching her a lesson. The child was being rude, and I—" "Shut up." His words cut through the air like a blade. Veronica froze, staring at him as if seeing a stranger. He knelt beside his daughter, gently brushing her tangled hair. "It's okay, sweetheart. Daddy's here." Emily sobbed harder and wrapped her tiny arms around his neck. Ethan felt her trembling, and guilt hit him like a wave. How long had he been blind to her pain? Sofia stepped back, tears glistening in her eyes. She didn't want to intrude on that moment, but when Ethan looked up, his expression softened. "Thank you," he said quietly. "If it weren't for you, I don't know what would have happened." "You don't have to thank me," she replied, voice shaking. "I just couldn't stand there and watch her hurt that child." Veronica laughed bitterly. "How noble. A maid lecturing me about parenting? Ethan, are you really believing this act? She's just playing the saint." Ethan turned sharply. "Don't you ever speak about her like that." He rose to his full height, fire flickering in his eyes. "You've crossed every line, Veronica. I've heard enough." "You can't talk to me that way. I'm your wife," she shouted, desperation creeping into her tone. "Not for much longer," Ethan replied coldly. "You have 15 minutes to pack your things and leave. I don't want to see you again." Veronica's eyes widened in disbelief. "You're throwing me out? For a maid?" "For hurting my child." His voice was low but deadly. "If you don't leave, I'll call the police." The air grew thick. Veronica glanced around. Sofia cradled Emily gently, eyes full of pity, while Ethan stood unyielding, his expression carved from stone. She knew she had lost. Biting her lip, Veronica grabbed her designer handbag, casting one last venomous glare. "You'll regret this, Ethan Caldwell. I swear you will." Her heels struck the marble floor in sharp, angry clicks. Then the front door slammed shut, echoing through the hollow mansion. Rain began to patter against the windows. Ethan stood still, the rage slowly giving way to exhaustion. He turned and saw Sofia wiping Emily's tears. The girl trembled, but found peace in the woman's arms. Ethan walked closer and laid a hand on Sofia's shoulder. "You saved my daughter." Sofia shook her head softly, voice barely above a whisper. "No, you saved both of us." And in that vast, silent house, stripped of lies and cruelty, the three of them understood something quietly profound. That night, a new door of fate had just opened. The rain that night fell for hours, as if trying to wash away every trace of what had just happened. When the last rumble of thunder faded beyond the hills, only the fragile warmth of three souls remained inside the mansion: Ethan, Sofia, and Emily, each one quietly recovering from their own storm. Ethan couldn't sleep. He sat on the couch near the living room, listening to the rain tapping against the windows and the faint sound of his daughter's breathing in the next room. Every sound reminded him of what he'd almost lost, the fragile child he loved more than life itself. By morning, pale sunlight filtered through the curtains. Sofia was already awake, preparing a simple breakfast for Emily: oatmeal and warm milk. She knocked gently on the door, and Ethan opened it, exhaustion still shadowing his face. "You don't have to do that," he murmured. Sofia shook her head softly. "I want to. She needs to eat something." Inside, Emily sat quietly in her wheelchair, her eyes still puffy from crying. When Sofia approached, the girl turned her head slightly, wary but curious. "Good morning, little princess," Sofia said softly. No answer, just a blink. But Sofia smiled anyway, lifting the spoon with steady hands, patient and kind. Ethan stood by the doorway, watching as his daughter didn't pull away this time. For the first time, Emily let someone feed her without fear. In the days that followed, the mansion began to change. Gone were the echoes of high heels on marble floors. Gone were the cold, sharp voices. In their place came the quiet laughter of Sofia telling stories, the gentle roll of wheelchair wheels, and the soft clatter of puzzle pieces clicking together. Each morning she opened the curtains wide. "Let the sunlight in," she'd say. "It reminds her the world is still beautiful." Ethan never replied, but gratitude welled inside him every time. One afternoon, he walked past Emily's room and stopped. Sofia's laughter spilled into the hallway. "Yes, that's it, the corner piece. Perfect, Emily." He peeked inside. Sofia was sitting cross-legged on the floor, hair tied messily, her eyes bright as Emily placed the final piece. And then, a miracle. Emily smiled, small, shy, but real. The first smile since the accident. Ethan felt something break inside him, something tender and long forgotten. That night, he found Sofia in the kitchen washing dishes. "I don't know how to thank you," he said quietly. She looked up, water dripping from her hands. "You don't need to. I just did what anyone would." "No," he said, shaking his head. Not everyone would. Sofia looked away, a faint blush touching her cheeks. The silence that followed was warm, filled with things neither dared to say. Days turned into weeks, and Emily kept changing. She ate better, listened to music, even asked to see the garden. Sofia was always there, telling her gentle stories, her voice a lullaby in daylight. Ethan worked upstairs, but he always found reasons to pass by Emily's door, just to see them, the two souls who had brought life back into his empty house. One morning, as Sofia brushed Emily's hair, the little girl stared at herself in the mirror and whispered, "Miss Sofia, I'm not scared anymore." Sofia froze, eyes glistening, then smiled through her tears. "That's right, sweetheart. You don't ever have to be scared again. I promise." Ethan heard those words from the hallway, and in that quiet moment, he understood. Sofia wasn't just a housekeeper. She was the light that had pulled them both from the dark, the gentle heart that had done what no wealth could ever buy: bring peace back into their lives. Days of peace passed quietly, and the house seemed to breathe again. Emily smiled more often now, sometimes making soft, hesitant sounds, as if trying to learn how to speak again. Ethan, too, began to sleep through the nights. He worked upstairs while Sofia cared for Emily with her usual tenderness, patient, gentle, always smiling, though her eyes often carried a distant sadness. One night, as Ethan walked down the hallway, he noticed a faint light coming from Emily's room. It was almost 2 a.m. He slowed his steps, ready to knock, but stopped when he heard Sofia's trembling voice from inside, so soft it nearly dissolved into the dark. "I'm sorry, Isabella. I'm so sorry I couldn't protect you. If only I had been stronger." Ethan froze. Each word pierced the silence like a blade. Who was she talking to? Someone she lost? He peered through the narrow gap of the door. Under the dim glow of the bedside lamp, Sofia sat beside Emily's bed, holding the girl's small hand. Her face was streaked with tears. Emily was fast asleep, her breathing calm, but Sofia kept whispering into the quiet, as if confessing to a ghost only she could see. "I promise, it won't happen again. I'll protect this one, no matter what." She leaned down, kissed Emily's forehead, and whispered, "Sleep well, my little angel." Something tightened in Ethan's chest. He stepped back silently, afraid to intrude on that fragile moment. As the door slowly closed, questions flooded his mind. Who was Isabella? Her daughter? Someone she had lost? Or a piece of her past she could never bring herself to face again? The next morning, when they crossed paths in the kitchen, their eyes met. Ethan hesitated. "Last night, I saw the light in Emily's room was still on. Couldn't sleep?" Sofia froze, her hands pausing mid-motion over a dish. A beat of silence hung between them. "I just didn't want her to be alone," she said softly. Her tone was calm, but her eyes slipped away. Ethan studied her for a long moment, wanting to ask, but he didn't. He realized some wounds didn't need to be touched. They only needed to be respected. From that day on, he never brought it up again. Yet in his heart, he knew Sofia carried something deep and painful within her, a scar carved by love and loss. And perhaps that was what made her so gentle, so patient, so full of quiet strength. Because sometimes the people who love the most are the ones who have lost the most. The following weeks passed in fragile peace. Ethan spent more time at home, working remotely and focusing on Emily. Sofia remained the same, gentle, attentive, hiding her quiet sadness behind patient smiles. But peace, as always, never lasts. One afternoon, while Ethan was working in his study, the phone rang. It was his lawyer. "Ethan, we have a serious problem. Veronica just filed a lawsuit." Ethan froze. "A lawsuit? For what?" "For domestic abuse and violation of shared assets. She's demanding half your property. and visitation rights with Emily. A cold chill crawled down his spine. She's lost her mind. There's more, the lawyer said grimly. She's hired a child psychologist to reevaluate Emily's condition, a Dr. Claire Benson. Ethan's jaw clenched. The name struck a chord. Veronica had mentioned Claire before, her old college friend, brilliant, ruthless, dangerous. 3 days later, a silver car pulled into the driveway. Sofia was helping Emily draw when the doorbell rang. When she opened it, Veronica stood there, elegant as ever, with another woman beside her, glasses perched on a sharp face. "Hello," Veronica purred. "I'm here to visit my stepdaughter, and this is Dr. Claire Benson, a child psychologist. We just want to make sure Emily's being properly cared for." Sofia hesitated. "Mr. Caldwell didn't mention anything about this visit." Veronica's smile sharpened. "Oh, don't worry. Everything's perfectly legal. Dr. Benson just needs to observe." Claire entered, her cold eyes scanning the room like a camera lens. "If you don't mind," she said smoothly, "I'd like a few minutes alone with the child." Sofia froze, but Emily clutched her hand tightly. "It's okay, sweetheart," Sofia whispered. "I'll be right here." Claire knelt beside the table, feigning warmth. "Hi, Emily. I'm Dr. Claire. I heard you were in an accident. Do you remember what happened?" The girl trembled, her gaze fixed on the floor. Sofia stepped closer. "Please, doctor, she's still in therapy. You shouldn't—" Claire interrupted without turning her head. "I know what I'm doing. I just need to assess whether this environment is stable." Then her tone softened, deceptively. "Tell me, Emily, are you afraid of anyone here? Has someone hurt you?" Emily began to shake, breathing fast, hands gripping her knees. Sofia moved in and held her shoulders. "That's enough. She doesn't want to talk." Claire scribbled in her notebook, eyes gleaming with quiet triumph. "You're a bit defensive, Sofia. I'm merely asking a few simple questions." At that exact moment, the door burst open. Ethan stood there, fury burning in his eyes. "Who gave you permission to enter my home?" Veronica spun around, pretending to be offended. "Ethan, we're just following procedure. I have visitation rights, and Dr. Benson is doing her job." "Her job?" Ethan shot back. "By triggering my traumatized daughter?" Claire rose slowly, adjusting her glasses. "Mr. Caldwell, your reaction right now? The aggression? It's concerning. I'll have to include this in my report." Ethan stopped dead. He understood instantly. This was all orchestrated. Every move, every word had been set up to trap him. Veronica's smirk widened. "You see, Ethan, the more you lose your temper, the more you prove my point." Sofia reached for his hand, whispering, "Please, don't." He took a deep breath, then spoke with deadly calm. "Get out, both of you. You won't hurt my daughter again." Claire closed her notebook, her tone smooth and poisonous. "I already have what I need. The court will be in touch." Veronica's voice dripped with venom as she turned to leave. "This is just the beginning, Ethan. Enjoy your peace while it lasts." When the door finally shut, Sofia dropped to the floor, cradling Emily as the child trembled in fear. Ethan's fists clenched, his jaw tight. He knew one thing for certain. He would not let them destroy his family again. After Veronica and Claire's visit, the mansion lost its peace. Every morning sunlight streamed through the windows, but the warmth was gone. Emily seemed to sense that something terrible was coming. She feared the sound of the doorbell, the ring of the phone, and every time Sofia stepped out of sight, she wheeled herself after her, terrified she might never come back. A week later, that fear took shape. Ethan received a thick envelope bearing the court seal. He opened it slowly, his face hardening. "Claire's psychological report," he muttered. Every word cut deeper than the last. Claire concluded that Sofia was unqualified to provide proper emotional care, that she had caused unhealthy dependency and recommended that Emily be removed from her current caregiver. Ethan's hands shook with fury. "She's trying to destroy us!" Sofia sank into a chair, voice trembling. "Maybe I should leave." He turned sharply. "What did you just say?" "If I stay, they'll use this against you. I can't be the reason you lose Emily." The silence that followed was heavy. Ethan looked at her, fear in her eyes, but also a heartbreaking kind of courage. "If you leave," he said softly, "it will break Emily and me." Tears welled in her eyes. "I just don't know what to do anymore, Ethan. I'm scared." "Don't be," he said firmly. "You have me, and Emily has us both. We'll fight." That night, Sofia couldn't sleep. She sat by the window, the wind outside whispering like a warning. She thought of Emily's laughter, of her fragile smile slowly returning, and then of how easily it could all be taken away. Maybe if she left, Ethan would keep custody. Maybe that was the right thing to do. She started folding her clothes, tears falling silently onto the suitcase. Then a soft noise broke the quiet. Sofia turned. Emily was at the door, crawling weakly, her face streaked with tears. "Miss Sofia," she whispered, "where are you going?" Sofia rushed to her, heart breaking. "Sweetheart, you shouldn't be out of bed." "I'm scared," Emily sobbed. "I heard you talking to Daddy. You're going to leave me, aren't you? Please don't." Sofia's knees gave out. She gathered the child in her arms, whispering through tears. "No, my love, I will never leave you, I promise." Emily looked up, eyes wide. "Really?" "Really. No matter what happens, I'll always be here." They lay together on the bed, Emily's tiny hand gripping hers tight. Outside, the wind still howled, but inside that small room, an unspoken promise bound them, two wounded souls clinging to each other for light. When Ethan opened the door the next morning, he froze. Sofia and Emily were still asleep, curled up together, faces peaceful, as if the storm had never existed. A quiet smile crossed his face. "They're already a family," he thought, "and I'll do anything to protect them." Later that day, the court summons arrived. Claire had been appointed as the expert witness. Veronica had her army of lawyers. The battle was coming, but this time Ethan wasn't afraid. He looked at Sofia and Emily beside him, and in his heart he knew, as long as they held on to each other, no one could tear them apart. The morning of the hearing arrived under a heavy gray sky. Rain still glistened on the pavement as a black car rolled toward the courthouse. Inside, Ethan sat in silence, his hands clenched, eyes fixed ahead. Beside him, Sofia's palms were cold despite her steady breath. In the back seat, Emily hugged her teddy bear tightly, silent and scared. The courtroom buzzed with quiet tension. Across the aisle, Veronica sat poised in a white designer dress, her blonde hair perfectly styled, lips curled in a victorious smirk. Beside her, Dr. Claire Benson, in her gray suit and glasses, exuded the calm confidence of someone who'd already decided the outcome. The judge called the session to order. Case of Emily Caldwell's custody hearing. Are both sides ready? "Yes, Your Honor," Veronica answered sweetly. Claire was the first to testify. She stepped to the stand with perfect composure, her voice even, rehearsed. "After thorough evaluation, I conclude that Miss Sofia Reyes is gravely unqualified as a caregiver. She lacks psychological training, therapeutic certification, and professional experience. Worse, the child exhibits severe emotional dependency, avoidance of others, especially her father, consistent with subconscious emotional manipulation from her caregiver." The words pierced the room like needles. Sofia looked down, fingers twisted together. Ethan's jaw tightened, but his lawyer gestured for patience. Claire finished, returning to her seat with quiet satisfaction. Veronica smirked beside her, certain of victory. Then came Sofia's turn. She walked slowly to the stand, her heart pounding. Her voice trembled at first, but grew stronger. I don't have degrees, I don't have certificates, but I have something they don't. Real love for that child. I don't know how to describe it in clinical terms, but I know what it feels like when she shakes at night, when she wakes from nightmares and calls my name. I know what it means to sit for hours just to see her smile once. I don't heal her with books. I heal her with my heart. The room fell silent. Even the judge lifted his gaze, eyes softening for a brief moment. Claire let out a short, dry laugh. Touching, but love doesn't replace professional care, and I assure you, I never frightened Emily. Those accusations are false. Ethan rose. You made her cry for hours. The judge struck his gavel. Order! The tension was unbearable until the doors at the back of the room creaked open. A woman stepped in, hair tied back, face pale but determined. Ethan turned, stunned. Linda? Emily's former nanny. Linda approached, holding up an old phone with shaking hands. Your Honor, I know I wasn't called, but I have evidence. The judge nodded. Proceed. She took a breath. I used to work for the Caldwell family. I left because I was threatened. But I recorded something I can't keep hidden anymore. She pressed play. Veronica's voice filled the room, sharp and venomous. Shut up, you useless brat. You're nothing but trouble. I wish you had died with your mother. Then came the sound of a child sobbing, something crashing, and Linda's trembling plea. Please, don't hurt her. Followed by Veronica's scream. You tell anyone, and I'll ruin you in this town. The room froze. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Claire's face drained of color. Veronica's hands shook. Ethan stood slowly, eyes blazing with fury. Sofia grasped his hand, silently begging him to stay calm. The judge finally spoke, his voice low and firm. Mrs. Veronica Caldwell, do you deny this recording? I was angry. I didn't mean... You verbally and emotionally abused a child. That is indefensible. Claire stammered, Your Honor, I had no knowledge of this. The judge turned to her sharply. Dr. Benson, as a licensed professional, you were responsible for recognizing abuse. Your negligence is unacceptable. I am referring your case to the medical board, and your license is hereby suspended pending review. Veronica broke down, shouting, You've ruined me. Ethan's voice was calm, cold. No, you ruined yourself. The verdict was delivered. Custody of Emily Caldwell is awarded to her father, Mr. Ethan Caldwell. Miss Sofia Reyes is hereby recognized as the child's legal caregiver. Mrs. Veronica Caldwell is referred to the district attorney for criminal charges of child abuse, and an immediate investigation is ordered. Dr. Claire Benson's license to practice is suspended pending review by the medical board. The gavel struck. The room exhaled. Ethan turned to Sofia, eyes glistening. Emily threw her arms around her, whispering, We did it, Miss Sofia? Sofia smiled through tears. No, Emily, truth did. Justice had spoken, and in that quiet aftermath, as the courtroom emptied, three figures stood together, small against the world, but radiant in the light of truth. On the drive home from court, the rain had stopped. Golden sunlight filtered through the trees, glimmering on the wet pavement like liquid gold. No one spoke. Ethan gripped the steering wheel tightly. Sofia sat beside him with red-rimmed eyes, and Emily hugged her teddy bear in the back seat, her gaze bright though she didn't fully understand. Yet something in the air had changed. Light, warm, as if the storm had finally passed. When they arrived home, Sofia opened the front door. The familiar scent of lavender and old wood greeted them. Everything looked the same, yet nothing felt the same. Emily was carried into the living room, while Sofia poured water, trying to steady her hands. When she turned, Ethan was watching her with a faint smile. We did it, he said softly. No, she whispered, her voice trembling. Truth did. Emily sat quietly on the sofa, holding her bear. Sofia knelt before her, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "You okay, sweetheart?" she asked gently. Emily nodded. Ethan sat beside them, his hand resting on his daughter's shoulder. The room was still, filled only with the sound of their breathing. Then, suddenly, a miracle happened. A tiny, fragile voice broke the silence. "Sofia." Sofia froze. Ethan's head snapped up. Emily looked straight at her, lips trembling, and said again, clearer, stronger, "Sofia." Time stopped. Tears streamed down Sofia's cheeks as Ethan let out a half-laugh, half-sob. "What did you just say?" Sofia whispered. Emily smiled through her tears. "Sofia?" Sofia pulled her into her arms, holding her tight as if afraid the moment would vanish. Ethan knelt and wrapped his arms around them both. Light seemed to flood the house, not from the sun, but from the hearts of three people who had finally found peace. Days passed, and life found its rhythm again, a gentler one. Emily spoke more now, one word at a time, each syllable a small victory. Every morning she called Daddy from her room, and every night before bed she whispered, "Good night, Sofia." Sometimes Sofia would just stand in the doorway, watching her, unable to believe this was the same child who once lived in silence. Ethan worked from home more often, finding excuses to stay close. He would pause at the doorway, watching Sofia and Emily play, realizing how much their laughter had become the sound of his life. One afternoon, as Sofia hung laundry on the porch, Ethan came to her. "Sofia?" he said quietly. She turned, sunlight catching her hair like gold threads. "I need to tell you something." "About the court?" she asked with a small smile. He shook his head. "About us." He hesitated, took a breath. "Since the day you walked into our lives, everything changed. You didn't just heal Emily. You healed me. I don't know when it happened, but I love you, Sofia." Her heart skipped. The world seemed to fade around them. In his eyes, she saw no pity, no gratitude, only love, deep and real. Tears welled up. "You don't have to say that," she whispered. "You don't owe me anything." "I'm saying it because it's true," he said softly. "And because this love isn't born from obligation. It's because of who you are." A breeze swept through, carrying the scent of jasmine. Sofia closed her eyes, tears falling, but this time from joy. "Ethan," she whispered, "I love you too." He smiled and pulled her close. "Thank you," he murmured. "For staying?" Inside, Emily's laughter filled the rooms like sunlight. Sofia leaned against Ethan's shoulder, feeling a peace she had never known. After all the storms, they had found each other, not in perfection, but in love. And in the golden light of the afternoon, Sofia whispered to the wind, "Sometimes miracles don't come from heaven. They come from those brave enough to love." The days that followed were wrapped in a quiet peace they once thought impossible. The house echoed with Emily's laughter, Sofia's soft footsteps, and the gentle notes of Ethan's guitar at night. They no longer needed to speak of love. It lived in every glance, every touch, every silent smile. And then, as spring returned, when the first blossoms opened in their garden, Ethan knelt beneath the morning sun and held out a small ring. Sofia laughed through her tears and nodded. A new beginning, fragile as breath, yet steady as the heartbeat of two souls who had weathered every storm together. That afternoon, the garden bloomed like a painting. Roses, lavender, and jasmine filled the air with soft fragrance. The golden sunlight wrapped everything in warmth. Under an arch of ivy, Ethan stood in a simple gray suit, smiling, his eyes glistening with emotion. From the far end of the path, Sofia appeared, holding a bouquet of white flowers. Her long dress swayed gently, her hair catching the light. There was no orchestra, no grand ceremony, only two people who had walked through darkness and now found each other in peace. Ethan's gaze followed her every step, filled with love and gratitude. Petals scattered underfoot as Emily, in her pink dress, joyfully tossed handfuls of flowers into the air. Her laughter rang out like music, and then she shouted, her voice clear and bright. "Mom?" Sofia stopped. For a second, everything went silent. Tears welled in her eyes as Emily ran toward her, hugging her legs. "I love you, Mommy Sofia." The crowd gasped softly, then broke into applause. Ethan joined them, placing a hand on Emily's shoulder and smiling. "I think she just said everything I wanted to," he whispered. Sofia laughed through her tears. "I already have everything, Ethan. You and her. You're my miracle." When the ceremony ended, the three of them released petals onto the garden pond. The wind carried the scent of flowers, and the sunset bathed them in golden light, a blessing from the world itself. Years later, spring returned. The house was alive with laughter. In the yard, Emily, older now, her legs still weak but steady, took careful steps with her crutches. "That's it, sweetheart. Slow down, you're doing great," Sofia cheered, her hand hovering near the girl's back. Emily grinned, sweat on her brow. "Mom, I did it." At the doorway, Ethan held a small boy, Noah, their son. The baby laughed and waved toward his sister, babbling, "Mimi!" Everyone burst out laughing. Sofia ran over to scoop both children into her arms, and Ethan wrapped them all together, his eyes shining with quiet joy. "Do you remember?" Sofia asked softly, smiling through happy tears. "I once thought I didn't deserve a family." Ethan squeezed her hand. "You didn't just deserve one, you created it." The afternoon sun painted their faces in gold. They sat together in silence, listening to the wind and the children's laughter. No words were needed. Happiness spoke for itself. Sofia leaned her head on Ethan's shoulder. "I used to think miracles only existed in fairy tales," she murmured. "But now I know miracles are born when we choose to love, to believe, and never to give up." Ethan smiled, kissing her forehead. "And when you chose to stay." Outside, the garden bloomed once more. Emily helped little Noah scatter petals into the breeze. He giggled, and she whispered, "Happiness is having someone who stays."